Welcome to Heather, welcome to Jane. Good to see you both on the programme again. Welcome back. Heather Brunskill-Evans, author of Transgender Children and Young People Born in Your Own Body. I mean, in the new situation, you will have to attest in front of a legal officer if you want to declare that you're a man or a woman. It's not just a case of, deciding one day to declare as a woman. It's not as easy as that, is it?
Currently, or if the Gender Recognition Act of 2004 is reformed. Sorry, I didn't understand your question, Nikki.
It's not easy at the moment. It's not going to be easy once it is reformed. It's not going to be as easy as all that, is it? Because you will still have to, my understanding is, attest in front of a legal officer.
It will be easy if the Act is reformed, as easy as any formal legal situation in which you declare something. So in that sense, it's going to be extremely easy to do it.
Too easy, do you think?
As far as I'm concerned, far too easy, yes. Yeah.
OK, why is it any of your business?
Well, it's very much my business, and it's very much the business of everyone in this country, particularly women and children. What actually happens is that those people who are very much for reforms of the Gender Recognition Act of 2004 argue that it's a small minority of people who want to do it, it frees them, we live in a liberal society, people should be allowed to identify in whichever way they want. And of course, that is partially true. I believe very much that people should be able to identify how they want. We live in a democratic society and we should be able to define ourselves how we choose. The point is that the reforms are very, very serious. They're very, very serious for women and children for the following reason. It isn't just it won't just affect a small minority of people, it'll affect all of us in that the following. The reforms will bring about two things. Firstly, self-declaration, a declaration of a feeling, and to make that declaration, the feeling, to be absolutely true. So, for example, if we take trans women, who tend to be the most vociferous of trans people in arguing this, that not only are they transgender, trans women, but they actually are women. And that is the step that I argue that we shouldn't go over. So the changes will bring about, crucially, a change to the birth certificate. The other documents that you talked about can more or less, transgender people since the 2010 Equality Act have had rights, protected rights in this country. Thank goodness they have those protected rights. The change to the birth certificate will do something else. It will say that you were actually born female. If you're male, that you were actually born female. And that will incur upon the rights of women. And I think we're sleepwalking in this country.
Why would it impose and incur upon the rights of women, as you put it?
Because the 2010 Equality Act, sorry to be so boring about these laws and acts, but they're terribly important,
You are not being boring.
Actually.
It's very, very interesting. Don't worry.
Good. Gives women a protected category. It gives sex a protected category. So that in all the kinds of situations that we can think of, it needs simply not just toilets. This has become so reduced to toilets. In all other institutions, women's refuges, prisons, and so on and so forth. That will fundamentally change, because what will happen is a trans woman will be legally a woman, so sexed a woman, so that it would be illegal then to prevent a man who identifies as a woman, who has a male body, from going into prison, for example, as a female offender. And if anybody has had the chance this morning to read the Mail on Sunday, there's a whole article about the amount of trans
Freedom
women.
of Information request 34 trans women in men's prisons at the moment, in sex offenders units, for their safety, one would presume, because you see that happens quite a lot. It doesn't mean that they're sex offenders. That is the situation, that's the information that has been gleaned. And the inference is they would want to move to women's prisons, and the assumption is that that would be a problem.
The thing is, two things there. They may want to move to women's prison. Of course, we can't predict that. At the moment, it's difficult for them to move to a women's prison because they have to have a gender recognition certificate, and having gone through the 2 years that you've talked about.
Hang on, stop right there. You're saying that's not the case, Jane.
It's just
I will come back to you. I just want to... There's so
Actually,
many
I really object to this because I was going to... Jane can have her turn.
But there's a lot of points here.
There are. If people don't have to have a gender recognition certificate which required the 2 years of medical intervention, and they self-declare, then it will be axiomatic that if they are then women and their birth certificate is changed, that they will be taken to a women's prison. And there are people in prison at this moment in time who have raped and so on, who are now sexually assaulting women in a prison.
That's an interesting one. We coming to me?
I can give you the name if you like, but do go to...
I know the name because it was thrown at me last week on a debate, and that one came up from a tabloid, and there is a serious question mark over that. Let's pick up a few things from there. Firstly...
Before you start, I want to hear from the audience.
Oh, my God.
And put your hands up if you want to say
it.
something about this. Put your hands up. I'm sure people will want to express it. Yeah? Feel free to come forward. Let's see what people think. Right, I've got where you are. Carry on, Jane.
Okay. First and foremost, the idea that there's some automatic conveyor belt from declaring your gender through to going into a women's prison is utter nonsense. And if you knew the field, Heather, then you would know that there was an appeal court ruling in, I think, 2013, which states that. Even now, without a reformed Gender Recognition Act, people, whether you have a gender recognition certificate or not, can be transferred to a prison. But in law, the paramount issue is security and safety of prisoners. If, Heather, I'm sure you're not going to, but if after our debate today you push me in front of the car or actually just go absolutely berserk and sort of stab me to death, and it's decided that there is something, you could be sent to a men's prison because women's prisons don't have the ability to hold people of a certain category. If somebody comes into the prison system either as a man who transitions or as a trans woman, the first duty on prisons is security. Therefore, they may ask to be transferred, but they will not automatically. And that was decided by court 2 or 3 years back. Nikki, on the other issue, and Heather actually did to some degree state this, I don't have a gender recognition certificate. I mean, I go through all this. I get the hormones, I get the surgery, thinking I'm going to get some cheap car insurance. And damn it all, they've changed it, haven't they? Because back in 2004, what has actually happened is we're in a moment in history. Before 2004, and Heather, this may give you nightmares, some trans people could go along to the registrar, births and deaths and so on, and they could sort of say, excuse me, look, I've changed my gender, can you just change the certificate? And they'd do it. No panel, nothing. But it was a postcode lottery. And the EU and human rights legislation said that what was happening is that trans people were being basically pushed out of having any rights, and we were being discriminated against on motor insurance, discriminated against on marriages, discriminated against on pensions, because we were in this sort of limbo. So from 2004, you could change your birth certificate. And Heather, if you go into the loo later on, have you got your birth certificate? Because if not, which one are you going to go to? You don't need the birth certificate for the loo. The Gender Recognition Act, as you say,
the loos here are actually for men and women. It's one of those very modern...
Hooray, hooray. Well, there is another issue. Yeah. There are two or three things...
Can you bring those other issues in just a second?
Go for it, yeah.
Can I go for it? I'm going to go for it. You wanted to say something. Put your hands up. Let's get round you and see what you think. Yes. Yeah, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Here's the question, right? Yeah. Should you be able to self-declare your gender?
I think, personally, having read the question, I think that it may encourage a dysfunctional society where it's full of anarchy. The reason being is because, for instance, if letters are sent with the title Mr. or Mrs., then are the senders now going to be subject to prosecution for doing stuff like that? And if that's the case, would that lead to court proceedings? How much of a contribution will taxpayers' money go into that? So I feel if this is going to come at the expense of everybody else, then it's not really in the public interest for those proposals to be enacted as a law or reformed as the part of the gender.
What about the basic principle of it? Anyone else want to come in on that? Yeah. Good morning. Hi. I'll come to you in a second. Yeah.
Hi, Nikki.
Should you be able to self-declare your gender?
I certainly don't think it should be made easier to self-declare your gender. I think anyone who is considering making such a life-changing decision should be appropriately counselled. If it was anyone close to me, I would rest assured, knowing that they would be getting medical and psychological support and living as that gender that they want to be for 2 years as well. I think that's a good thing for them. So no, I don't think it should be made easier.
Who disagrees with that? I just want to hear. Yes, with the blonde hair. Yeah.
My view is that you should be able to make it easier to self-declare your gender.
What about that 2-year process? What's your response to that?
Isn't the age where you can have a sex change the lowest age 18?
What is it, 18?
Is it 18?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you have to live till 20 to be able to, if you feel like you were born in the wrong body, you have to live till 20 to be able to declare that. When these emotions come from your limbic system, which it's found psychologically that it develops at 12 or 13. So you have to live for 7 years in the wrong body to be able to know yourself, to be able to self-declare yourself to others. And in regards to the toilet issue that the lady raised earlier, I believe that's to do with men going into female toilets and abuse, so forth. If a man really had it in his head that he was going to go into a female toilet and abuse a woman, I really don't think that a sign on the door would stop him.
Right, do you want... Yes, you had your hand up the first way. It didn't get a chance to come to you. What would you like to say?
Hi, good morning.
Morning.
I think we've got a very obscured idea of trans people. My best friend is a trans woman, and she had already lived as a woman in herself before any sort of medicalisation came to be. The legal documents is more like the icing on the cake. These people exist in society, and your first question to Heather was, is it your business? And I doubt the Reforming Act and the consultations that are going on are going to say, okay, one day someone's going to just wake up and then go to the nearest registrar and change their gender. There will be some kind of counselling, there will be something, maybe not as long as 2 years, because these people are already existing, so it's kind of redundant in a sense of whether it's 18 months or whether it's 2 months. They already exist in themselves, what they believe to exist as. So I think the consultation will hopefully make an intelligible decision about what processes could work instead of putting these people through this.
An intelligent decision and an intelligible one. That would be a good combination, I think. Anyone else, yeah? We heard you feeling the first bit. Yeah, in back row, good morning.
I think it should be easier because I still don't understand who's going to be abusing it. It seems that these people will be going still through counselling consultation with experts. If these people are experts, they should be able to, red light somebody that is supposedly abusing it. I don't understand the people that would be getting away with becoming a woman. I just don't understand that.
Another thing is, I mean, hear from you two finally on this. This is moving with such rapidity, the debate around these issues. There are certain people of, a generation who think, what's going on? They're not disapproving, they're not being negative, they're not being prejudiced. They're just thinking, it's moving so fast, and there are whole new terms coming into the English language. What on earth's happening? The world is spinning so fast on this. There was a tweet this morning to me, for example, from an academic saying, this is on this programme, the BBC is peddling heteronormative, compulsory cisgender normativity.
Oh, God.
What does that mean? I didn't like to send a sort of curt reply. I mean, that's the sort of language I'm talking about. We're peddling heteronormative, compulsory cisgender normativity. That's what people have a problem with. Can you spell it? Sorry? Can I spell it?
Can I throw in something?
I can spell BBC One, but I can't spell... Yeah.
Can I throw in a comment? Yeah. I mean, the real issue with this is we've had a year of nobody actually talking about it because the government announced it. It was just, we're going to do something about it, but whatever. We haven't talked about it, and there's been a lot of rhetoric. There might be a consultation now. There are several things. Firstly, the trans community would not have chosen this as the big issue if we'd wanted an issue. Most of us don't worry too much about it. However, there are people now, and I spoke to the person who was involved in the legislation in 2004-5, and they said they hadn't heard of a phrase called non-binary, which is people who do not identify as male or female, before about 2006-7. So one of the big asks, which is why it needs reforming, is that in this country, in Germany, in countries around the world, there are non-binary people. Mm-hmm. So the question is, are we going to start recognising those? Second...
It's not as if it's new, though, is it?
It's newish compared to...
There have been non-binary people throughout
They've been around, but they haven't been talked
about. Non-binary Neanderthals, I'm sure there
Probably.
It goes back hundreds of thousands of years.
Hidden and repressed. And the other thing which I just throw at people, and no, we're not going to have a hate crime where if you say Mrs. when you mean Mr. It's very like anything else, like race, like sexual orientation. If amongst some friends you use a word like queer, which has been reclaimed, fine. If you go on the street and shout, you, I hope there's no lip readers there, yes? You, what's it, queer, then that's probably a Section 5 offence, exactly the same with trans. And the other thing that is not being brought out, and it needs reform, guess what? I could, and that's another reason why I've not actually gone through the process, because my passport says female, my GP record says female, every record except my birth certificate says female, and guess what? It doesn't cause me any difficulty. Is that if I went to the gender recognition panel, I can't go to it. I send something off in the post. It costs me about £500 in total once everything's taken into account. And they can say no, and I've got no right of appeal. Isn't it about time I had a right of appeal for something like that?
Final word, Heather.
Okay.
Sum up for us in about a minute. That'd be good.
I need longer than a minute because I'd like the same amount
We haven't
of
got
time
it. We're going to talk about the high street.
That Jane has had.
Okay,
Thank you very
90
much.
seconds, go.
Thank you very much. Jane is quite right that she has been able to obtain all the certification that she needs in order to live as a woman. So it's slightly going down a rabbit hole to talk about the gender recognition certificates because since 2010, people like Jane have had all the rights to live as a trans person. Jane is a trans woman. There is no objection in this country to her living as a trans person. These are complex issues, and I'd like to correct the audience, actually, that the reality is that there won't be experts talking to people who self-identify beyond this point. That's the whole point. It is completely demedicalized. There will be no counselling. People will literally be able to self-identify as whatever gender they want, sex they want, actually. The second thing is that gender isn't inherent. It's not a biological phenomenon, as the person over there said. It's got nothing to do with the limbic system. Sex is a biological category. Gender is the way that we become socialized, and we've been socialized for millennia, presumably, along the binary division, and people largely don't fall into it or struggle with it. And so on that spectrum, there's a whole range of different kinds of femininities and masculinities. The point is that the British public need to understand that the significant reform that will happen is that the identity which is permissible in our country, thank goodness that people can be transgender, will be changed. In that, they won't just be transgender, they will be the actual sex. And the last point, I know you're wanting to hurry me on, the last point is it's completely reductive to say, you know, if men want to go into toilets and abuse people in there, they will do so, and they don't need a gender recognition certificate to do so. Of course that's the case. But that leads to the larger issue that we all know, whether we like it or not, and I don't like it, I wish it weren't so, we live in a society where there is sexual violence towards women. And we don't know whether anybody choosing to self-identify as a woman is doing so in good faith or bad faith.
There we will leave it.
Opens up a whole area for bad faith.
We have to finish there. Thank you very much indeed. You can join in.
You didn't frankly have the balls to put country before party.